We had a chat with the chairman of the House Committee on Financial Crimes, Representative Kayode Oladele. He starts with his own assessment of the ongoing efforts to fight corruption.
Before today, pre-2015, there was this widespread belief that the government was not doing enough in the fight against corruption. And this was because the perception was there. Of course, it led to reality that the government of the day at the time lacked political will. And when we are talking about political will, it is because we don't have institutions in place. So the fight against corruption would be dependent on the will of the president to fight it. It will be dependent on the determination of the president and the executive to fight corruption. Of course, the executive cannot do that without the collaboration of the National Assembly as well as the Judiciary. But the arrowhead, anyway, should be the president. So where the president lacks that political will and determination, and in the absence of a very strong institution, of course, we are going to have a lackadaisical approach to the fight against corruption. So that was what we witnessed before the emergence of this administration, of the Buhari administration. Since 2015, when this administration was inaugurated, the National Assembly, particularly the House of Reps, also came up with our own legislative agenda. And part of that agenda is the fight against corruption. Because we know that if we have a president that has that very good, strong political will, strong commitment to the fight, then we should be able to, using our own powers as enshrined in Section 4 of the Constitution to make laws, give the president that legislative backing to fight to fight corruption. So in the past 3 years now, we have done a lot, particularly in strengthening the fight against corruption. You discover that the president has done, he has his own agenda. We have the strategy for fighting corruption, but that strategy would need legislative backing. And in order to achieve this, we have introduced into to the National Assembly and passed some laws. In particular, we introduced the EFCC Amendment Bill, which was sponsored by me in the House of Reps. Of course, there is no similar bill in the Senate. So what the Senate is waiting for is the passage by the House, and then of course they will give concurrence. At the same time, we've passed the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Bill. And I will tell you the relationship between the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Bill and the EFCC Amendment Bill. You recall that Section 1(2)(c) of the EFCC Act states that Nigeria, the EFCC shall be the designated Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit. And that had been very contentious, particularly within the international community, our partners abroad, the Egmont Group. Because what they said was that they will want the NFIU to be an independent, autonomous unit. It can be within the EFCC. It can be located there, but it should have its own independence. And this is also in conformity with Recommendation 29 of the Financial Action Task Force recommendation that says that you can put an FIU within a bigger organization, but it should have its own independence and autonomy financially. So what we did was to amend that section, delete Section 1(2)(c) from the EFCC Act, and instead created an FIU now. That bill has been signed into law by the president. The NFIU bill has become a law. So what we have done is to create another organization, a unit, an agency, if you wish, from the EFCC. That's Section 6, Section 1, 2, 3, and Section 6L. So today we have an NFIU operating independently of the EFCC, and that is to institutionalize the fight.
So you're trying to say indirectly that you've passed a lot of key legislations.
Key legislations that will assist the presidency in the fight against corruption, because you can not just have a policy, you need to have a legislative backing.
So what's occurring to me now when you say for instance, the NFIU was more motivated, that legislation was motivated from out than within?
Definitely, because we belong to Egmont Group of Financial Intelligence Units.
Yes.
And apart from the Egmont Group of Financial Intelligence Units, there's also an agency, an intergovernmental organization known as Financial Action Task Force. Yes. Of course, Nigeria is a member of FIU, of Egmont Group. We've also applied to join the Financial Action Task Force. And part of the recommendations and the requirements is that our financial intelligence unit must be independent. So they were of the opinion that making the EFCC as the designated Nigeria Financial Intelligence will compromise the work of the FIU, because that will also mean that the EFCC will have some form of influence over the activities and the functions of the unit.
What I'm trying to find out from some of these legislations that you say have been passed and are key is, when we come down to it, how much difference does it make to in the environment where we are saying we're trying to tackle corruption?
Right. The difference is this.
Take for instance the EFCC, the amendment to the EFCC.
I'll tell you why some of these things are very important. Yes. I spoke about the political will. Yes. And it's only in situations where you don't have strong institutions that political will becomes a very big factor. Now, I spoke about the previous administration that lacked political will, and because there were no laws in place to institutionalize the fight, the agencies depended more on the determination of the president than the laws to guide them in their work. Of course, we've passed beyond the bills. We passed more bills. Yeah. We have, for instance, the Proceeds of Crime Bill, which was passed this week by the House of Reps. Again, it was a bill that I sponsored in the House of Reps. Somebody else sponsored it in the Senate. But that's a bill that has a very far-reaching implications in the fight against corruption. You may have also read about the Executive Order number 6 that was signed by the President a few weeks ago. It's very akin to the Proceeds of Crime Bill. So what we are trying to do is to find ways and means of ensuring that we expedite actions in cases that relate to corruption and related activities. So we are moving from just the criminal part to civil forfeiture process. So while the EFCC, the ICPC, and other agencies may be doing the criminal aspects by arraigning the criminals or those that are found wanting before the courts of law for conviction, we can use the civil forfeiture process to file an action in rem against the properties.
Let me understand you when you say it's akin to the executive order recently signed. And you know that executive order is getting a lot of attention. I understand the court case has also been instituted on it.
Yes.
So when you say it's akin, what would be the relationship, or how would it then stand?
I deliberately said it's just like that, it's akin to it, and I will tell you why. What the executive is trying to do is to introduce a civil forfeiture process, which in the executive's opinion would fast track the fight, particularly in tracking all this process of properties that are discovered to have been purchased or acquired through, or alleged to have been acquired through a process of crime. And what we intend to do with the Process of Crime Bill is the same thing, with the exception that the Process of Crime is wider than the executive order. I can tell you this, the executive order is trying to achieve what the Process of Crime wants to do, but without going through the process of legislation. And that is the problem. The only thing is that the executive order and the law, or the act of parliament, cannot exist side by side. One has to give way. So once this is signed into law by the president, automatically by the operation of law, the executive order will be extinguished. It will cease to exist.
Let me take you on this perception that a lot of people have, that it appears there is infighting among a lot of our agencies that are fighting corruption, or that
Yes.
are supposed to be the ones at the forefront of this fight. You also oversight, at least the EFCC. What's been your finding? What's been your own understanding?
Well, that is the truth. I can't tell you that it's not the truth. It's not the case. There's always this interagency rivalry, and it's been there for long. It's something that even when I was working as the chief of staff at the EFCC before I became a member of National Assembly, I saw it, and we've done a lot. We've done a lot to let these agencies know that they are working towards the achievement of the same objective. It's not something that is personal. It's something that we are doing in the interest of the country. And 2 years ago, upon assuming this position, we had a conference, a retreat with several agents of these agencies to discuss ways and means of working together. We discovered that somehow, some of the functions overlap. But there's a way by which we go about it. There are some cases, what we used to do in the past is, if a matter has been sent to the ICPC, and the ICPC is working on it, and then the same matter has now been sent in form of a new petition to the EFCC. If the EFCC becomes aware that the matter is being handled by the ICPC, the EFCC will not handle it. So that is how we are working to ensure that we do not have contradictory decisions.
The fear of most people is that this rivalry might be affecting the fight, because if you're supposed to be united,
yes,
and to face an opponent, and instead you're facing each other, that it appears...
No, that has never led to any issue when it comes to the fight against corruption. I will tell you where that fight actually was obvious. We saw it, it was manifested, and we all saw it, and we tried to help them resolve it. It was in it was during the period of the enactment of the Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit Bill.
Okay.
The EFCC wanted the NFIU to be domiciled within the commission. And ICPC and other agencies like DSS, they all felt that EFCC would be monopolizing that unit, as they used to do according to them in the past, that EFCC would not share information with them. And that is the reason why EFCC is always above others in terms of activities, because they have access to information that other agencies do not have access to. So many of these agencies came together against the EFCC. They said, no, we want this agency to be alone, to be separate, to be a stand-alone agency. At that time, they were calling it agency. And during the 7th Assembly, an attempt was made to do that. There was a public hearing, and everybody came. And that was why you will see Nigeria Financial Intelligence Center Bill, Nigeria Financial Intelligence Agency Bill, because they wanted it to be a separate agency. They felt that making it a unit would also mean that it could be domiciled within the EFCC. So they felt that let's make it an agency. Now let's see how you can domicile an agency within another agency. So it became so pronounced. And when I became the chairman, I had to call, and then of course, because of my experience, I met with several stakeholders to tell them that this shouldn't go on like that. It's going to affect the fight against corruption. It's going to affect the need to work together. It's going to affect our image internationally. And of course, if you look at the international best practice, it is NFIU, Nigeria Financial Intelligence, so it is FIU that is called. It is Egmont Group of Financial Intelligence Units. So why do we have to call it agency?
Okay. Okay.
So we resolved that anyway with the passage of FIU bill. Okay. Now act.
But you think in other aspects they're working along fine?
In other aspects, particularly under this administration, we have not been having that series of intelligence rivalry and that could lead to breakdown of things. I think to a very great extent, they've been working together.
Except for the point where we had that face-off over the arrest of the former boss of the DS.
Yes. Well, you know, sometimes that could be, maybe they will say it's order from above. I don't know, but
okay, let's leave that for now. Yes. When one role which you outlined when we started is that when this fight against corruption, it has to be a united one, from the executive to the legislature with the judiciary. There's been this perception, and I think it's one that has been shared by the president, that it appears the judiciary is not on speed. I don't know what your own perception is.
Well, I have said it over and over and over again that the fight against corruption cannot succeed without the cooperation of the judiciary, because everything that we're talking about, the buck stops at their desk. Even if there is an investigation and the investigation reveals widespread corruption, financial crimes being committed, people who still have to be arraigned before the courts. Even under the civil official process, it's the court that will decide whether a person will forfeit his property to government. But we cannot do without them. So far, the judiciary has come under very serious fire in Nigeria, particularly on the issue of corruption, and that many of the judges are compromised. Of course, they are human beings, and there are many of these accusations or allegations have weight. Many of them are credible, and I know that the judiciary is also working hard to ensure that bad eggs within it are taken out and benched. Having said that, I want to say that it is not all the judges that are corrupt. Even before this administration, the judiciary took the fight against corruption very seriously, and I will tell you why. In fairness to them, there was what they called practice direction even before the advent of this administration. The CJN came with practice directions. And what does that mean? Under the practice direction, it enjoined all judges to give priority to corruption and terrorism cases in their courts. That they should not allow unnecessary delays. They should not allow unwarranted adjournments. And also, they should not allow stay of action, particularly when somebody says that is appealing. So all of these are things that the judiciary is also put in place to ensure that they join the fight against corruption.
So, what do you have to say regarding some of the issues raised there? Is it that corruption is losing the battle? Write in and let us know your thoughts, and let's take your contributions. Anyway, this is where we will